Hello, my name is Robert. I'm a social worker from Germany, and I just finished the master's program social work as a human rights professional at the Ali Solomon University of Applied Sciences in Berlin. In the next 10 minutes, I would like to share with you the findings of my empirical master thesis with the title, Who Cares? Social Work in the Context of Climate Crisis in Germany, a preliminary exploration of practitioners' perspectives. To state the basic assumptions of my work. For me, the climate crisis is unquestionably the greatest challenge facing our world society. The strength of social work as a global profession in this context is our ability to learn with and from each other, share ideas, and connect, for example, through this online conference. But philosophical considerations such as Ubuntu, togetherness, or interconnectedness with nature are rarely addressed in social work practice, research, and teaching in Germany in the context of the climate crisis so far. My thesis was therefore based on identified research problems such as knowledge gaps on how to implement an eco-social work practice and to what extent social work practitioners even consider environmental issues as crucial to their daily work. The objectives of this paper were to investigate how relevant the natural environment is for social work practitioners in Germany. In order to inquire about the relevance, I focused on the sub-aspects regarding what the attitudes and personal experiences of social workers are in relation to climate change, to carry out how social workers perceive the impact of climate change on their clients, and to understand what professional attitudes, experiences, and relevance climate change already has for social workers. For this purpose, a quantitative research design in the form of a questionnaire with an open-ended question was chosen, which I developed and conducted. A total of 300 practitioners with at least a bachelor's degree in social work participated in the study, providing initial exploratory insights into the practical realities and environmental relevance for social work practitioners in Germany. The quantitative analysis using PSPP at a univariate and bivariate levels was primarily descriptive. The answers of the open-ended question were coded thematically according to Brown and Clark's six-phase model, and parts of the questionnaire were influenced by pioneering practice-oriented research such as Marlon van Rooyen and the other works mentioned on this slide. As a result of this study, a discrepancy was found between the appearance of an attested environmentally friendly perspective of social workers and the actual being of professional reality. To illustrate this, on the one hand, it was found that more than half of the participating practitioners already see the natural environment as relevant to their practice and are personally and professionally concerned about the impacts of the climate crisis. For example, on a professional level, 90% of practitioners call for a greater thematic inclusion of the natural environment and the climate crisis in social work practice. Nearly 80% believe that the climate crisis is dangerous to their clients now or in 10 years. In this regard, the social workers already reported frequently identified infrastructural and health problems experienced by their clients, such as overheated apartments, cardiovascular diseases, as well as asthma and allergies, which may increase in the future due to the climate crisis. Thus, on the other hand, 80% of the practitioners stated that the possible impacts of environmental disasters are not addressed in practice and that they rarely reflect on the role of the natural environment in their practice. Furthermore, due to various obstacles such as lack of training, time, finances, or communication, they stated that they were unaware of the climate-related concerns and health, as well as infrastructure vulnerabilities of their clients. The feedback of the practitioners therefore seems to contradict the actual practical reality. The way how I examined where these discrepancies were actually coming from was to follow Heather Buetus and colleagues' assumptions from a study they conducted in 2020. According to them, personal perspectives of the social workers, which includes moral beliefs, attitudes, and experiences towards the natural environment, can affect the approach and behavior of the professional perspective. I was actually able to establish a quantitative relationship via bivariate correlations that confirms Boeto et al.'s hypothesis about a mutually influencing relationship between personal and professional perspectives. For example, the higher social workers perceived threat of climate change to themselves, the higher they rated the risk of threat to their clients. And an increased personal and client professional risk perception lead them to perceive more strongly the relevance of the natural environment to their own practice. This illustrates that practitioners are less likely to address the natural environment in their professional practice if they do not personally consider it relevant or a threat. The second part of the analysis followed this relationship and was able to identify on the basis of descriptive, bivariate, and thematic analysis a variety of personal attitudes, experiences, and beliefs that influence the professional perspective and promote, but also impede on a practical involvement of the natural environment. For example, it was found to be supportive that the practical relevance of the natural environment increases among the practitioners questioned when they experience, observe, and local climate change as a local problem. Furthermore, it was also found that social and political discourses, some of which are embedded in practitioners' personal perspectives, affect or are reproduced in their professional perspectives. In this context, not only could evidence be found of a connection between personal and professional skepticism about climate change, but fundamentally embedded patriarchal gender identities among the men interviewed, or the partially understanding of the climate crisis as a crisis of prosperity, according to which socioeconomically marginalized clients have less to lose and are therefore less vulnerable. Other findings lead to the conclusion that the climate crisis is increasingly not perceived by practitioners as a social crisis, and that the symbiosis between the eco-social and structural dimensions are only partially recognized. In the third part of the analysis, the qualitative findings revealed that to a certain extent, the natural environment and climate change are not yet part of the professional understanding of the practitioner's research. In the absence of a clear theoretical or conceptual practice, as well as an unclear mandate for practitioners from the social work organizations, the clients, and the profession itself, personal attitudes, as well as the reproduction of societal discourses, can lead to practitioners failing to recognize certain contexts, such as the climate-related vulnerability of clients or a professional mandate for action in the context of the climate crisis. A consideration that has therefore been raised is that a form of professional dualistic understanding of action is prevalent among practitioners. This means that human needs are considered and prioritized separately from the natural environment and its influences. It was also found that the environmental dimension is often only seen as relevant to practice when, for example, basic needs of clients are under acute threat. In the context of the climate crisis, this means that due to a lack of knowledge about the dynamic feedback loops between people and the environment and the symbiotic relationship between social and environmental crises, practitioners are only or mainly responding to problems that have already occurred. So to answer the research question about how relevant the natural environment is for social work practitioners in Germany, the statistical and thematic analysis of the data set has shown that this needs to be looked at from a different angle. To conclude, the inclusion of the natural environment, which is demanded by almost all practitioners surveyed, can only take a relevant place in practice if the foundation of the professional mandate consisting of social justice as well as human rights is extended by the aspects of the natural environment, such as environmental justice or concepts of sustainability, Ubuntu, or interconnectedness with nature. Therefore, I argue for a future preventive understanding of social work to advocate on the socio-political level for issues such as sustainable development and a socio-ecological structural change. In this respect, my study illustrated that in the course of the climate crisis, the profession of social work in Germany must develop a positional stance and or an eco-social framework, including the perspectives of the social work organizations, the practitioners, and the clients, which guides the thinking as well as the action to change the way of practice. And if this thesis could clarify one thing, then it is the fact that for more than half of the practitioners, the natural environment is already relevant for the practice, and how much practical, low threshold practice knowledge that can achieve a great dynamic of change already exists. Therefore, a thematic discussion as well as a change of the practical work in this respect would be met with broad approval among the surveyed practitioners. One recommendation that therefore would be that an ethical anchoring of the natural environment as a clarifying reference could contribute to a revision of the prevailing dualistic professional understanding. Social workers need a profound theoretical as well as ethical knowledge about why the climate crisis is a social crisis and thus belongs to the professional understanding of social work. For this reason, socio-political and global climate interest perspectives need to be taken into account, and research must focus more on clients' lived experiences regarding the climate crisis. Social work in Germany, due to the country's responsibility as one of the biggest contributors to the climate crisis, must understand it as a global social injustice crisis and critically reflect its own action based on social justice, human rights, and learn more from global knowledge perspectives that are shared, for example, through this conference. So thanks for listening. And if you have any further questions, please feel free to contact me. The email address listed on the first slide of this presentation.